Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Long time in the making. All right. So I don't have you for too long, so we can go ahead and get this kicked right off. Welcome everybody to an all-new episode of GVN Interview. Today I will be talking with the director of the Tomorrow War, Chris McKay. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I am good. First, let me say, I love this movie.
Oh, thank you.
I love this movie. The genius that I really took out of this was Chris Pratt is one of those guys that just brings comedy in itself, right? Like I can only imagine you don't really need to write that much comedy for Chris Pratt. But what no one really gives Chris Pratt credit for is his delivery of the drama of it, of really kind of getting into the moment of it. And I thought this movie added a whole lot more layers to Chris Pratt as an actor. So how was it directing him?
Oh yeah, I mean Chris is great. I loved working with Chris. He's really generous. He's a really fun guy. He's like generous as a human being. He's generous as an actor. So he's a great. I think he brings a lot. I mean, he's got a lot of charisma, but he also just really is giving. And it's the best, the best way I can describe it, because he's a guy who makes the other actors super comfortable. He's playful in a scene. He'll try stuff. He's unafraid to try anything, and he's unafraid to be vulnerable. And that's something that with an actor like that, you don't see that as often as somebody who's just unafraid to be. He's going to be a tough guy. He can be tough. He can be hard. He can also be really soft and sincere, and that's to me was really exciting to be a part of that and to work with him on.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing I took from this movie, I'm curious what you want people to take from this movie, but the biggest thing I took is two things: family, and the idea that tomorrow is never promised. So you want to kind of make the best out of what you have, because the very next day it could all be gone.
Yeah.
So I took those two things from it. But what would you like the audience to take from
That's absolutely right. How do you make every single day that you have count? That's something that's really important to me. How can you, and by count meaning like, how can you improve in your relationships? How can you be a better human being? How can you, say less when you don't need, if you don't need to. There's plenty of. I think there's a healthy relationship strategy is to only say things that are really important. Only talk about only. I think approaching all of your relationships with more love and more empathy, and then approaching the world with empathy and sympathy in your heart and things like that is really important. How can you make the world a better place? Day by day. How can you leave the world in better shape than you found it? That to me is important, and that's kind of all tied together, I think, in Chris Pratt's character Dan.
Absolutely. And another thing that I love the most was usually when you get a movie, a sci-fi action movie like this, right? You get people who try too hard with the action or the visuals or just blending in comedy. And what I thought you did amazingly was the comedy felt pure. It didn't feel like, oh, this moment just needs something funny, so let me just throw something in here. What's the balance of taking a movie that you want people to take seriously, but you also want them to have fun with? What's the balance of creating that?
Yeah, hiring people like Sam Richardson is a good place. Is a good place to start. Yeah, I mean, I knew that movie. You hit it on the head. Like the movies like this can take themselves a little too seriously at times, and that translates sometimes into things not being very fun, or can feel pacing wise can feel like a drag. There's no version of this movie that it's not going to be a long movie just because of the way the movie is structured and the events that happen in the movie. So you have to sort of be able to sustain it. I think the key is I try to make sure that if we're going to if there's comedy in the movie, that it comes either out of character or comes out of the situation. You can't import it into the thing or make a reference or do something like that. As much as humanly possible, it has to come from the character, what the audience knows or doesn't know about the character, and how the character responds to the situation and the events that they find themselves in. And the best example outside of this movie that I use as an example in the making of this movie was Bill Paxton in Aliens, where it's a guy who is there. Bill Paxton's funny, but he's not necessarily like a comedian, right? But because he is suddenly, game over, man, we're fucked, get out, like he's having the audience, the reaction to the situation that the audience would be having, and he speaks for the audience. And for me, Chris to a certain extent, but Sam in particular speaks for the audience in almost every scene that he's in. And just Sam's just such a winning personality. So, so hiring Sam, hiring Mary Lynn, hiring Mike Mitchell, people like that. JK is like stealth comedy, like he's a really funny guy and has obviously done comedies and comic performances as well as dramatic stuff. So having somebody like that who could do both, as well as Chris who can do both, Chris had the burden of being in every single scene. He has to also be the man of action. He has to do all this stuff. So he's got comic moments, but he's also, there's the human drama of the movie and things like that. So, director's job at the end of the day is to navigate tone. Like that's really the one thing that maybe the one thing that's sort of within your control as a director, but it's also like the one thing you should be bringing to the table. Like, what is the tone of this movie? And I knew that this movie had to navigate a few different tones if it was going to be successful. So it was, whether it was from a writing standpoint or on set or an editorial, I knew that we were going to have to constantly be trying to figure out when comedy would be appropriate, when it would not be appropriate, playing with the pace of the movie, playing with the pace of how fast or slow the movie was meant to be working, how intense or not intense the movie is, how intense action-wise or how intense emotional-wise. So there's always going to be that kind of thing, music and Roger Barton's editorial work really helped make the movie lift off the screen.
And I will say the thing that really captured me the most was the whole premise of this movie, without giving away anything. The whole premise of this movie is unlike anything we've seen before. Like, you can't compare it to Live, Die, Repeat. You can't compare it to Aliens. You can't compare it to Independence Day. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. So I'm always curious when you create things like how terrifying those aliens looked, or just the premise of something so forward thinking. How genius does it take a person to be to create something like that?
Well, you have to ask Zach Dean, because it starts with Zach and what he put together. And that was, to me, that was why I wanted to do this. Is I read this script. It's called The Ghost Draft. It combined a human story with a big sci-fi premise and a big gettable sci-fi idea. Sort of a different, not different, but just, it had its own take on time travel, and being in the sort of like the Wright brothers era of time travel. And I just, I loved it. I loved that it had a little bit of, had a little bit of action, had a horror. I'm a big horror guy as well as a sci-fi guy. So like, it had elements, that were going to be, going to be scary. You got to design an alien. You get to, come up with something that, hopefully people haven't seen before as much as possible. You get to make an intense, get to create intense action scenes and put pressure on our characters. And all at the same time having a human family drama at its core, with sort of a gettable, relatable theme. To me, that was what made me want to make this movie, and was the thing that was just like, oh yeah, I get to do all of this stuff. Cool, that's great. And so so immediately, as soon as I read it, I recognized the genius of Zach Dean, and immediately wanted to be a part of it, and be able to do the world building and do all the character exploration, and develop a kind of a style for the movie to be able to play be able to play with the tone, be able to flow between right. One tone to the next. So that was I mean, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
I will definitely tell everyone who is going to tune into this this weekend. I believe it comes out this Friday.
Yep.
It's unlike anything you've ever seen before. It will get you emotional. It will get you terrified, and it will kind of, appease all the action needs, all the visual needs, all the sci-fi feel. It's just a really, really, really good movie. And I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, but I was very excited about how focused it was on, like we said earlier, the idea of family, the idea on, making every day count, because you just don't know. Because usually with these sci-fi movies, you get to the end and it's just like, nope, we beat the monster. And it's just like, that was it? Like, that's it? That's all I'm supposed to take from this? So I was really glad that it had a true meaning that I can kind of chew on as a viewer.
That's good.
So I just want to ask you two more questions. I don't want to keep you here too long. First one is, when you first agreed to do this, seeing the climate that we're in, did you ever think to yourself, maybe I wait on this to see if theaters open back up? Or was this something you were just passionate about getting out no matter what?
Yeah, like we didn't know COVID when we were making this movie. COVID was not on anyone's mind, right? Like, it was not something that this was 2019 when we started. It's like September 2019 when we started shooting this movie. We finished in December 2020, and then 2 months later, I guess in January, we finished in January. Sorry, January 2020 is when we finished the movie, and then COVID happened. We started the lockdown about 6 weeks after we finished shooting the movie. So COVID was just starting to be on everyone's radar as we were finishing production. So we edited and did the visual effects in a COVID environment, which was sending everyone out to their homes with computers and working remotely and all that stuff, socially distanced. When it came time, when we were finishing the movie, which was a year later, which was December 2020, when we were finishing the post-production of the movie, the studio, we were still in a place where the studio was unsure what was going to happen in the summer. We weren't going to clearly release the movie in December because there was no theater action going on. But they still weren't sure about what was going to happen in July of 2021. So they started to have conversations with the streamers, and Amazon immediately got behind the movie. And I think if you're not going to premiere your movie in a movie theater, being able to premiere your movie to 240 countries around the world simultaneously, to have the biggest audience, the biggest potential audience you possibly can have as a filmmaker, to have a dialogue with that many people, that's a really exciting proposition. And then the fact that we mixed the movie for the theatrical version, but we also mixed a home version, and sound wise as well as color correction, picture wise. And the HDR version of the movie is the closest you will see to what I saw in the color correction suite. It is that's really exciting to have the movie be as close as humanly possible to what I was looking at, what Larry was looking at in DI. That to me is really incredible. So I feel like, yes, everyone wants their movies to be in movie theaters, but I also think that this to me is not, this is a really exciting proposition to be able to have as much of what we tried to put into the movie be, have the confidence that people are going to receive a version of the movie that we feel like is that we endorsed, and then have it to reach as many people as humanly possible. That's really exciting. So I'm really excited about,
Yeah, I asked because, the whole thing with Warner and a lot of the directors not wanting their stuff on HBO Max, them wanting a theatrical release. I was always, and this is obviously from the outside looking in, I would assume you would want your project, to be as in front of as many eyes as possible.
Yeah.
If you keep delaying it, you're just hoping that someone's still excited a year from now.
Yeah.
Being able to put it in front of screens, and that's a tall task. With this generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with as many other movies and TV shows and things like that are out there that have also been waiting and are, it's like planes, stacking up planes, going into LAX, you know what I mean? Like there's
Right.
a million things that are about to land. I mean, and just the amount of stuff, the new stuff that Marvel's doing with Loki and WandaVision and Winter Soldier and Falcon, stuff like that. So like, there's a million things to occupy our time and stuff that we're all excited about. So yeah, James Bond can get lost in the middle of that.
I'm glad you said that. We're on this. I was just about to say, by the time that releases, I'll have forgotten that I didn't already see it yet. Like I'll have forgotten, like, oh man, that's right.
Yeah,
so to me, holding on to that it's very dangerous in today's time.
Yeah,
you just get it out, and if you want to re-release it in theaters, there is a fan base for people that will go see it again in a bigger screen.
Absolutely.
But you don't ever want to put something on hiatus and assume the fan will be there when you're ready to showcase it. It's a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
All right, my last question for you. I would kick myself if I did not ask this. Just shot in the dark, throwing this out there. You were originally attached to do Nightwing. Whatever happened. Now, my biggest question for you is, when you were going to do this, the Nightwing movie, was this ever something as a continuity project, or was this always just do your movie and we'll worry about the rest later?
Yeah, it was originally set up as do your movie and we'll figure it out. That's the way it was originally set up. Now, there may have been behind the scenes conversations that I was not privy to. I don't know, but I do know that the conversation that we had was that this was going to be, it's going to be Dick Grayson Nightwing movie, and Batman definitely hovers over that movie spiritually on some level, maybe more than spiritually, depending on how the movie was going to go and what was happening, because there was you have to, I'm sure this better than I do, but there was a lot of stuff going on. There's been a lot of stuff going on in that world, and lots of turmoil and lots of good faith efforts that people were trying to do to get certain movies made and that sort of thing, and hopes and dreams that people had about what continuities were going to play out and that sort of thing. I was excited about a Ben Affleck Batman movie. I'm also excited about a Matt Reeves Batman movie. So I'm going to be first. I'm the first guy in line for either one of those movies. You know what I mean? But I still want to make Nightwing. I still think they want to make a Nightwing movie. I think that they are looking at, they've got a lot of things. They've been through a rough time, I think. Unprecedented with all the things and that they've gone through, and I think we're all glad that the most of the movies have been a success, so that they can keep going with the things they're doing. They put Zack Snyder's, people didn't think they were going to put Zack Snyder's, Justice League, and then they did, you know what I mean? And people loved it. And so even people that didn't think they were going to loved it, so that's kind of amazing. And hopefully, you never know what's going to happen. You never know. So if you want to make something, or if you want to be a fan of something that you just never know. These things, people change their mind, things happen. And again, that's not saying that like people don't want to make a Nightwing movie, to be absolutely clear. I've never heard them say they're not interested in making a Nightwing movie. I've only heard them say that they're interested. They just have a lot of other priorities right now. And so that's what they're trying to sort of get their ducks in a row. I think they also, with Matt Reeves, I think they made, a promise about a trilogy, which again, I'm excited. If that's the way that thing plays out, awesome. I'm just hoping that, I'm hoping that they, especially because the amount of people that ask me about Nightwing on this press tour, you're going to be surprised to hear that you're not the first.
I'm glad. It means the fanfare is there.
Yeah, exactly. Every single person asks me about that movie. Every single person is excited about that movie. I get, messages on Twitter and friends and everything else. Like people want to see that movie and they want to see that character because that's just a great story. And there's so much of that world and Bloodhaven and everything else. Like there's so many things you can do in that universe, and you can tie Batman in and also not have to. And there's also Nightwing's had relationships with other superheroes that you could bring in if you depending on which way you went and what else other movies they're making, you could bring anybody into that world. So
Yep.
It's I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful that they're going to make that movie, and I also think too with Tomorrow War, with them being able to see that, I think, like at the time I had Lego Batman and the Lego movie as the things that I'd done. And they knew me from being on the lot and a guy working on the lot and stuff like that, but they hadn't seen what I could do with a live action movie. So I'm hoping also too, that they see that and go, oh yeah, we have this filmmaker who wants to do this thing. Let's
do it.
So, and I just hope that even if they don't make it with me, if, I prefer it with me, but even if they don't, I just hope they make that movie because I think that's going to be, I just think it's like, what they did with Iron Man in the Marvel movies. Like they didn't go with the marquee character. They went with somebody who was down the marquee a little bit, and they had great success with that character. And Nightwing is a solid character in the DC world and a very clear and very, very relatable character. And and there's a great father and son story there. And you get to see Batman from a different point of view. You get to see Batman in a very different light, which I think is also necessary, to keep Batman interesting, over all these years and stuff like that. Even though, again, I'll be the first person in line for any Batman movie. I think that perspective helps. Helps you sort of like look at that character in subsequent movies down the line. So I don't know, for a lot of reasons, I'm hoping we make that movie.
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave you with this. This is for Warner Brothers to hear and call you immediately. If they, if they're curious as to how it could work, where it could fit, getting someone around 20 to 24, like a Dylan McDermott kind of guy, you easily could have that Dick Grayson interact with Matt Reeves's Batman.
Yep.
And what makes Nightwing so cool is you can span him off, and he could be how you start your Bat family, but he also could be how you usher in the Teen Titans and bring in all that young money that Teen Titans could build up from that. So, and maybe a Nightwing movie is how we could get Slade Wilson. Joe Manganiello is just sitting there, ready for his phone to ring. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Fingers crossed. But Chris, I want to thank you so much. This is way long overdue to be able to sit down with you. I'm glad I got to do it for the Tomorrow War.
Yeah, me too.
Amazing movie. I can't wait for everybody to check it out. And I definitely hope we could speak again soon, maybe when some Nightwing news happens.
Absolutely. Love to.
Definitely. But here's to Amazon giving you more opportunities to create more content for them. And who knows, maybe something else from the world of the Tomorrow War.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. You take care.
Great seeing you. Talk to you later.